I need Mr. DeCastro to empty all of his pockets.
What's that?
Empty your pocket, pants pocket.
This is illegal. This is a violation of my Fourth Amendment.
No, it isn't.
Yes, it is. I don't have any recording devices on me. What are you talking? He's a pig.
Excuse me?
I said he's a pig.
Okay. Sir, I'm not going to permit you to speak to anybody in my courtroom in that manner. And if you don't want to apologize, I'm going to hold you.
I'm Walter Graves, and I want to start with one fact because it's the whole case. The prosecutor in this case asked for 90 days, suspended. Suspended means no jail. The judge ignored her and gave this man 180 days straight to jail that same day. Double what the state asked for filming a traffic stop. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how a low-level misdemeanor turned into 6 months in a cell, why this judge's behavior had a lot of people using the word tyrant, and why a higher court eventually threw the entire conviction out. Quick disclaimer first, I'm a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer, and this is general legal education, not legal advice. And I'm going to be honest with you about both sides here, because the man at the center of this did not help himself. So let's set the stage. The man is Chille DeCastro, who goes by Chille. He's a well-known First Amendment auditor with hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and he films police for a living. On March 15, 2023, in Las Vegas, an officer named Brandon Bork pulls over a woman for an expired, suspended license plate, and DeCastro, who happens to be nearby, walks up and starts recording. That, by itself, is completely legal. Let me say that clearly because it's the foundation of everything. In this country, you have a First Amendment right to film police officers doing their job in public. Federal courts have said it over and over. You do not need permission, and you do not have to stop just because an officer is annoyed that you're there. But, and this is the line that decides these cases, the right to film is not the right to interfere. The legal question is never just, was he filming? It's whether he crossed the line from recording into actually obstructing the officer's work. And that's where the officer kept telling him to back up. And there's a second layer here, because DeCastro also identified himself as press. Now, you don't need a press badge to film the police. The First Amendment protects all of us equally with a camera. The famous YouTuber and the random guy on his phone, exactly the same. But when someone clearly announces they're there to document, it gets even harder for an officer to claim that person was secretly trying to interfere rather than report. So you've got a man who is openly filming, openly saying he's there as press, being told to back up with no specific distance. On paper, that is a very weak obstruction case, which makes what happened next even harder to justify. Now here's the first detail that matters, and it actually helps DeCastro. When this officer testified, under oath, he admitted he never gave DeCastro a specific distance. He just kept saying, back up. Not back up to the sidewalk, not give me 15 feet, just back up.
Seconds. And your testimony is you didn't have any time during the entire back and forth to tell him a specific distance to back up to?
Not time, but no opportunity.
And that's a real problem for an obstruction charge, because federal courts have generally protected the right to film police from a reasonable distance, often somewhere around 10 feet. If the officer never told him exactly how far to go, how do you prove he refused a lawful order? DeCastro's argument was, I did back up, and nobody ever told me a number. Honestly, as a legal argument, that's not bad. That's the kind of thing that should create reasonable doubt. So if the law was arguably on his side, how did he end up serving months in jail? Well, this is where I have to be straight with you, because DeCastro spent the entire case lighting matches. During the stop, he didn't just film. He told the officer, and I quote, "Go back to your car, little doggy." He's taunting the officer on camera. And then it gets worse, because the real story isn't even the street, it's the courtroom. Watch what happens when he gets in front of Judge Ann Zimmerman, because this is the part everyone's talking about. Before anything else, he's ordered to hand over his phones and empty his pockets. And
To surrender their phones, or you can leave.
Are your phone copies and I'll take one, or you can have it.
I need Mr. DeCastro to empty all of his pockets.
What's that?
Empty
Your pockets and give up your phones to the judge.
DeCastro immediately starts shouting that this is illegal, that it's a violation of his Fourth Amendment rights. Now, I have to referee this honestly, because here he is actually wrong, and it matters. A courtroom is not a street corner. A judge has near total authority over what happens in her courtroom, including security. She can absolutely require you to surrender recording devices and submit to a security search before you come in. That is not a Fourth Amendment violation. Courts have upheld that kind of control for decades. So when DeCastro is yelling about his rights being violated just for being told to empty his pockets in a courthouse, the law is not on his side there. He's treating a courtroom like it's the sidewalk, and it isn't. But, and here's the turn, the judge doesn't exactly cover herself in glory either, because then DeCastro calls one of the officers a pig right there in the courtroom. And look, that's a stupid thing to do. You should never insult people in a judge's courtroom. The judge threatens to hold him in contempt and put him in jail on the spot, and she has that power. Contempt of court is real, and a judge can jail you for disrupting proceedings. But you start to see the temperature in this room, and it is personal. Then there's another moment that tells you where this is heading. The defense asks to convert his lawyer to standby counsel, a pretty normal request. The judge denies it and calls it a delay tactic.
All right. I have your request to convert counsel to standby counsel. I'm going to deny that request. Either you represent him or he should have previously requested a Faretta canvas to represent himself. That I just consider that a delay tactic, so that request is denied.
Little rulings like that, stacked up, start to paint a picture of a judge who has already made up her mind about this man before the evidence is even finished. And then comes the verdict. And this is the part that should bother you no matter how you feel about DeCastro. Judge Zimmerman finds him guilty on both counts. And then she sentences him. Now remember what I told you at the very beginning. The prosecutor, the state, the side trying to convict him, only asked for 90 days and suspended at that. Suspended means he wouldn't actually sit in jail at all as long as he behaved. That was the government's own recommendation. The judge doubled it to 180 days and ordered him taken into custody immediately. No suspension, straight to a cell. Let me put that in perspective for you because this is the heart of it. Judges do have discretion in sentencing. They are not required to follow the prosecutor's recommendation. But when a judge takes a low-level misdemeanor where the prosecutor wanted 0 actual jail time and instead hands down double the maximum the state even asked for and sends a man straight to jail that same day, you have to ask the obvious question. Was he being punished for the crime or was he being punished for the attitude? Because if the answer is the attitude, that the little doggy comments and the pig comment and the camera are what really earned him 6 months, then that is not justice. That is a judge using a jail cell to settle a personal score. And that is exactly the kind of thing the appeals process exists to catch. And that's exactly what happened. DeCastro sat in the Clark County Jail for nearly 4 months, and then a higher court reviewed the case and overturned the conviction, threw it out. Which tells you that an appellate court looked at this same record, the vague backup order, the officer admitting he never gave a distance, the whole thing, and decided the conviction could not stand. He was right enough on the law that the conviction got reversed. But, and this is the brutal part, he still did the 4 months first. You can win on appeal and still lose 4 months of your life sitting in a cell while you wait for it. The system eventually corrected itself, but only after it had already taken something from him it could never give back. And now here's the part that's going to make you angry. Because you're probably thinking, okay, the judge got it wrong, so what happens to the judge? And the answer is almost certainly nothing. There's a doctrine called judicial immunity, and it means that a judge cannot be sued for the decisions she makes on the bench, even if those decisions are wrong, even if they cost a man 4 months of his freedom. A conviction getting overturned is not a finding that the judge committed a crime. She keeps her robe, she keeps her job, she keeps her salary, and the next morning she's back on the bench. The only real accountability for a judge like this is a Judicial Conduct Commission or the voters at the next election, and both of those are slow and rare. So when people watch this and ask how she could possibly get away with it, that's how. The system is built to protect the judge far more aggressively than it protected the man standing in front of her with a camera. So let me give you the honest takeaway, because there are real lessons here for everybody, not just auditors. First, yes, you have the right to film the police in public. That is real, and it's important, and you should never let anyone tell you otherwise. But the right to film is not a right to interfere, and the smartest thing you can do when an officer tells you to back up is to back up to a clearly reasonable distance and keep filming from there. Don't give them the obstruction charge. Second, the taunting, the little doggy, the pig, all of it. That stuff doesn't make you brave, it makes you convictable. It hands the other side a reason to bury you that has nothing to do with whether you actually broke the law. And third, understand the difference between the street and the courtroom. On the street, you have rights against unreasonable searches. Inside a courtroom, the judge runs the room, and picking that particular fight just hands them the contempt hammer. But none of it changes the bottom line. A man got double the jail time the prosecutor asked for, immediately, for filming a traffic stop, and a higher court agreed it should never have happened. You can think DeCastro is obnoxious. I'm not here to defend his manners, and still understand that when a judge punishes the person instead of the crime, every single one of us should be paying attention. Because the camera that judge didn't want in her courtroom is the only reason we get to see exactly what she did. I'm Walter Graves. If this showed you something about how the system really works, do me a favor and subscribe, because the next case I break down might be the one that protects your rights. I'll see you there.